welcome to my video on the best Terastal for every rock type Pokemon. So in this video we are going to go through the pure rock type and all of the dual typings and assign the best Terastal types for each of those typings. Now there will be in the description below a time for all of the individual typings, so if you want to go check that out for a specific typing, you are more than welcome to do so. Also, I do want to say that this project has been taking a very long time. I've put so much time, effort, and passion, realistically, into this video. So I really would appreciate if you could like this video, subscribe, interact in any way with the channel. There's going to be plenty of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet stuff coming out on the channel, including a lot of competitive content as well. So if you do want to kind of check any of that out, I really would appreciate it. But without further ado, let's get started. Just some clarification about this video. First of all, this is not an exhaustive list of every single Terastal that would work well with that typing. It's just ones that, in my opinion, would work best for those specific typings. Also, this does not factor in abilities, so in the trailer we saw that Colossal turned to a water-type Terastal and had its steam engine activated. Now, in some cases there are going to be abilities that are going to allow for this to be able to take place effectively, and it's going to allow for abilities to be used with regards to the Terastal combination. And when I've talked about the typings here, I have not considered abilities. I will talk about that separately when I do the competitive guide videos in the future. Also, some Pokemon may be suitable to use specific Terastal based on powerful moves that they have. So for example, if a Pokemon has a ground type move such as Earthquake, which is more powerful than Terra Blast, then they could definitely turn to that Terastal to get that stab, to be able to allow that to do more damage. So in some cases where Pokemon have got powerful moves or a wide move pool, they may be suitable to use more variety of Terastal, but again, I have not factored that in with this one, just on the specific typings as a generalization. Here we have the pure rock typing. Now, rock types typically are known for their bulk, but they also have a lot of weaknesses. So they are weak to grass, they are weak to water, they are weak to fighting, they are weak to steel, and they are weak to ground. Now, the best Terastal, in my opinion here, would be the Flying type. The Flying type allows you to hit super effectively on the grass and the Fighting type. It will allow you to hit neutrally on the Water type. It will allow you to hit not very effectively, unfortunately, on the Steel type, but it will also give you the ground immunity there as well. So I think Flying does work in your best favour here. As a secondary one, I have given Grass as an option, because Grass realistically will allow you to hit Water type for super effective damage, allow you to hit Ground type for super effective damage. Not very effective against Steel, but you will resist the Grass types, and also you'll hit neutrally on the Fighting type as well there. So Grass type definitely works as a really good secondary one. And then I put Fairy type on here because Fairy type hits super effectively against the Fighting type and will hit neutral on the rest of the mons except for the Steel types. You do need to be very cautious about that, because the Steel types will come in and hit you for super effective damage. So in my opinion here, Flying and Grass are going to be your best ones, and then Fairy is a second alternative that does work quite well. There aren't many single type options that do work really well for Rock type without putting you in harm's way of another weakness. Next up, we have the Normal and Rock type, which at the time of recording there are no Pokemon listed as Normal Rock type. The suggested Terastal I have for these ones are Electric. Now, realistically, you're going to have Water types come in against this, so Electric could definitely work in terms of getting rid of the Water type that would come in. You've got the Flying type to cover both the Grass type Pokemon that could come in against the Rock type, and also the aspect of the Fighting type Pokemon that would come in. So Flying does cover two of your big weaknesses here, and then you've also got Psychic, which again covers the Fighting types coming in as well. You could put Fairy in here as well if you wanted to, but that is entirely up to you. You have got the opportunity of there being things like ground types coming in, so you could have water or grass, could potentially come in as well, but I would limit it down to be these three. I think Flying would probably be the best Terastal for a normal rock type Pokemon. Here we have the Bug and Rock type. Now there are a couple of Bug Rock type Pokemon. The ones that I've chosen are Armaldo and Crostal because they are two pretty decent Pokemon when it comes to competitive. Now we've got three different Terastals that can work here. You've got the Grass typing. Now this will cover the Rock type weakness that you still have, as well as covering any Water types that might come in to get rid of you because of your Rock typing. You've got Electric type, which would cover any varieties of things like Water typing and possibly even a Flying type that might want to come in for neutral damage. You've then got a Water type Terastal as well because of the option of them bringing in another rock type, which obviously would mean that you'll give them super effective damage in that aspect. Now, those are the 3 recommended. Terastal is quite an interesting Pokemon to get around, and there are a few different Pokemon that will come in against it. So I would recommend any of those 3 based on what your team building already is looking like, but do pay attention to your team build when designing. Next up we have Dark Rock, and immediately the first thing that runs out to me here is your 4 times weakness to fighting. So I've put Fairy and Flying as the Terastal typing here. Flying obviously being super effective against the grass types that could come in, and also the fighting type. Fairy type being super effective against any fighting types. Now you could run a poison type here to resist the fighting type, and then also be able to hit hard against fairy types, which are super effective against you. And then I've suggested the grass type because you could definitely see a ground type or a water type come in here, and that grass type would then deal with that. So many different options that you've got to run here based on situations you predict yourself to get in. So I would recommend looking at what your team is looking like and deciding building based on that. Next up, we have got the Dragon Rock type. Now, this typing does have a couple of different weaknesses. You have got things like Ice type weakness, you have got Fighting type weakness, you have got a Ground type weakness as well. So couple of really common weaknesses there, and there are a few ways that we can get around this. So in terms of the Ice type, we can definitely bring in a Fighting type and also Steel type as well. The Fighting type will cover both of those and hit them for super effective damage, because realistically they're going to cause you a ton of damage. Now bear in mind that an Ice type will probably be less likely to switch in because Rock is super effective against Ice, so you do need to be kind of cautious in that respect, or think about that beforehand. You then got the Water type to cover the Ground type. You could also use Grass if you wanted to, but I think Water just works a little bit better. And then as you have got a Fighting type weakness as well, definitely you could run a Flying type Terastal if you wanted to hit against that. The main Pokemon, in fact the only Pokemon that runs this typing currently, is Tyrantrum, and is a very powerful Pokemon, so any of those Terastals that I've recommended definitely would work. Next up we have got the Electric Rock type. Now the only Pokemon to do this is a Alolan Golem, which obviously is a fairly forgotten Pokemon, honestly, in my opinion. But yeah, we've got Electric Rock type. The main weaknesses we've got here are 4 times weakness to ground, you've got a weakness to grass, and a weakness to water as well. So in terms of the weakness to ground, definitely grass and water are really good coverage here, because they will hit both the ground type weakness, and also the grass will hit the water type weakness as well, and the water will resist the water weakness. Now, Grass will probably be the best Terastal because it's super effective against 2 of the weaknesses, but also is resistant to the grass. But if you want to get rid of the grass aspect as well, you've got the Bug typing, which will be super effective against grass, same as the Flying typing will be super effective against grass, and immune to the Ground typing as well. Next up we have got the Fairy Rock type, and the 2 mons that represent this are going to be Deontay and Carbink. So those are the 2 main Pokemon that have this typing, but more could come in the future. Now, the big thing about this is you are 4 times weak to Steel types, so you definitely need something that is going to be able to 1, resist Steel type, and 2, cause damage to Steel types. So the Ground Terastal is going to be your best friend in this scenario, because 1, it gets rid of the Steel types, 2, it can also get rid of the Poison types that are likely to appear. Now, in other cases, you are likely to see things like Ice types, Grass types, or Water types. Now, they are big problems for the Ground types, so in some cases you might prefer to run something like a Flying type to hit any Grass types that are going to come in, to run an Electric type to hit any of the Water types that could end up coming in, or you could even run like a Fire type to try and hit the Grass and the Ice type there as well. So those are all options that you can run. I say Ground is fantastic, but you'd have to build your team around making sure that you can deal with Ground type mons, but also you've got the Flying, the Electric, the Fire, which are also suitable Terastals to use in any other circumstances. Here we have got the Fighting Rock type. Now the only Pokemon to have this typing currently is Terrakion, but I'm sure in the future other Pokemon will gain this typing. So with regards to this, you have got several weaknesses. You have got the Psychic weakness, you have got the Fairy weakness, you have not got the Flying weakness that you normally have with Fighting, but you have got the Water weakness and Ground and Grass weakness from the Rock type as well, and you haven't got the Steel weakness due to having the Fire type. So with this, you're likely going to see a Ground type Pokemon or a Water type Pokemon fairly commonly, so I would definitely recommend using a grass type Pokemon. As you're unlikely to see a flying type Pokemon, I think this works particularly well. You've then got Poison type, which allows you to be able to cover the Fairy type Pokemon. Bear in mind, obviously, ground types are going to be quite likely, so not running a Steel type would be beneficial for you in this case. But the Poison allows you to resist the Fighting type Pokemon as well. And then finally, we have Water, which allows you to cover the ground type situation that could appear on here. So I think Grass type definitely is going to be your top Terastal option, Poison being a really good one as well, but you could definitely run Water or any other kind of option that you think would work best here. Next up, we have the Fire and Rock type. There are two Pokemon here, Colossal and Makago, that have this typing, and this typing does have quite a few severe weaknesses. It has a 4 times weakness to ground and a 4 times weakness to water, not to mention a 2 times weakness to rock and a 2 times weakness to fighting. So with this, I would definitely recommend, again, running a Grass Terastal. The Grass Terastal will work really, really well because it gets rid of your 4 times water weakness and gives you a super effective attack against it, and gets rid of your 4 times weakness of ground and also gives you a super effective attack against it as well. You could also run Water, which allows you, it runs it for the rock as well. You could run Water, which does the same thing, but essentially creates a weakness for the water, as opposed to a neutral, which, as opposed to having a super effective attack, which you would get with the grass. Now, with regards to the fighting type, you have got the flying type attack, which would allow you to be able to hit that for super effective damage. I think personally, grass and water are the best ones here, with flying definitely being kind of a secondary option. But I would personally go grass, then water, then flying. Next up, we have the flying and rock type. So with this, we have got Aerodactyl and also Minior being our main notable Pokemon here. And the weakness-wise, you have only really got the fairy weaknesses. So you've got electric weakness, you have got a rock weakness, and you have got an ice weakness here as well as a water weakness from the rock typing. Now, with this, for the flying type weaknesses to do with your rock and your ice, I definitely would recommend covering with a steel type Terastal. That would definitely help deal with those two options, and possibly dealing with electric type slightly as well. You've then got your grass option, which allows you to cover your rock type as well as your water type Terastal. As well as the water type that might come in against your rock flying. And then you've got the electric type, which again covers the water type that may come in. You might want to use the ground typing as well, because that covers a few more of the different Pokemon. So, for example, it might cover the rock and the electric issues. And then you might have fighting as well, which allows you to cover the rock and the ice issues that you would see from this. However, I think it's quite unlikely that an ice type Pokemon will come in against this, because obviously rock is super effective against ice types. Next up, we have got the ghost and rock type, which there are currently no Pokemon that have this typing at time of recording. So with regards to this, you've got your standard ghost weakness of the ghost super effective and the dark super effective. Now, you could run the fairy Terastal or the Dark Terastal in this case, and it would take away your weaknesses, evolve with the ghost typing there, and would allow you to hit super effectively with the ghost type if you have the Dark Terastal, and super effectively on the dark if you have the Fairy Terastal. Now, with regards to the rock typing, you do have the weakness to ground, water, and grass, and also steel. So with regards to this, I would definitely recommend that you run potentially a grass or a water Terastal, because you're going to likely have a ground, water, grass, or steel Pokemon come in. Steel probably could be likely, but I think definitely having the water or the grass here would work really, really nicely, allowing you to hit, or if you use the grass, you can hit the water type super effectively, and you can also hit the ground type super effectively. Water, you can hit the ground type super effectively, the steel type neutrally, and also take not very effective damage from the water type, but you do have to obviously be considering the grass type that could come in as well. You could also run a flying type here as well, which isn't going to work very well for the flying type, but it definitely will work well with giving you a ground immunity and also hitting the grass type for super effective damage. So it depends what you personally need to look for here, but there are definitely lots of different Terastal options you could run there. Anything that I've mentioned definitely would work in a battle. Next up, we have got the Grass Rock type, only noted with Cradily. Now, we have got a few weaknesses associated here. You've got the Poison typing, you've got the Fighting typing, you've got the Steel typing, to name the first three of them. You won't have to worry about flying types in this sense because you have got a rock type covering you, which obviously means that it's going to go to neutral damage and a flying type is unlikely to come in. Now what I would recommend here is to possibly go for a steel type. It will cover the ice type weakness and also give you an immunity to the poison type, as well as if another steel type wants to come in to try and hit you, then they're going to have not very effective damage against you. With regards to fire, I think that that would work potentially even better, because you will have super effective against ice and also super effective against steel if that wants to come in as well. So you've got two really strong prevalent types there that you can hit against for super effective damage. And then you've got the flying type, and that covers particularly the bug type weakness as well as the fighting type weakness there as well, so works also for super effective against multiple different types, but do be cautious obviously because you are going to be weak to the ice type damage that you could potentially take. So I'd say fire and flying are both really good here, and in fact steel is good defensively, whereas fire and flying I think are better in the offensive sense. Next up we have got the rock ground typing. Now this typing is actually got two huge weaknesses. Is what I'll say. We have got grass type weakness ×4 and a water type weakness ×4 as well, whereas also having a ground type weakness and an ice type weakness too. Now ice types are less likely to come in because you have got the rock type stab already, meaning that they're less likely to risk coming in, but ground types, water types and grass types are definitely more likely to come in. So with regards to this, I have given a few suggested Terastal. You could go for a very generic Terastal, such as something like Fairy, which would hit neutral on everything, but in terms of ones that I would suggest more so, you have got water typing here. Now water type takes not very effective damage from the ice and also the water type. It does take super effective damage from the grass type, which is a risk from it, but it does hit the ground type super effectively. So it does work, but also you have to be very careful with the risk. You have also got the grass typing. Now this covers both of your 4x weaknesses better, because you then have the super effective on the water type, super effective on the ground type, not very effective damage from grass types, but you do also have the super effective damage coming from ice types. Now you do have to be very cautious, obviously, of that ice type coming in. As I said, it's less likely to come in, but it still could come in. So grass type works better than water type, but at the same time, it is a little bit risky to play. You've then got the bug typing here. Now the bug typing takes not very effective damage from the ground type. It will take neutral damage from the water and the ice type, and it will do super effective damage against the grass type. So actually it works more as a defensively based Terastal as an offensively one. So I would say if you're going for offensive, go for grass or water. If you want to go defensive, go for a bug Terastal there. But all three of those work really well. Next up we have got the ice rock type. The notable Pokemon here is Aurorus. I think it's the only Pokemon that has got the ice rock type. And actually this is quite interesting with the number of weaknesses that it does have. They also can cover some of its own weaknesses. So with regards to the ice type, you've got rid of your fire type weakness by having the rock typing there. You are still weak to the rock type. You are still weak to the steel type on a 4x effectiveness, so do be very cautious of that. You are also going to still be weak to the fighting type on a 4x basis as well. So again, you do need to be very cautionary with those kind of situations. And then rock, you have also got the water weakness and the ground weakness as well. So a couple of Terastal I've put together. You can come up with different ones, definitely. A flying type Terastal, for example, would work quite effectively because it gives you the immunity to ground. It gives you the not very effective damage from the fighting types, and also takes it down to neutral for the steel type. But I thought what would work most effectively would probably be the ground type, and the ground typing would cover things like your rock damage, it would cover neutral on the ground, it would cover the steel type Pokemon, and would also just neutrally hit the majority of your other weaknesses. But bear in mind, obviously things like water types coming in could be a big problem for you, causing you to take a lot of damage. You could also turn to something like a fairy type, which allow you to potentially take less damage, but bear in mind you have got that 4x steel damage, so a steel type Pokemon coming in would wreck that fairy typing as well. Now fighting type does come in and covers a few of your different typings as well. It covers the steel type for super effective damage, it does cover the obviously fighting type down to neutral damage. It will then hit the rock type for super effective damage. It will hit the ground type for neutral damage, the water types for neutral damage as well. So a lot of these will be kind of nullified with the ground and the fighting Terastal, which is definitely what I would recommend mostly. But the electric Terastal does also work in covering things like your water type and taking neutral damage from the majority of the rest. Obviously ground type is a chance of coming in, so it's not the best Terastal, but it's an option that you can definitely run if you're in a pinch. So I definitely recommend the fighting or the ground, but electric is a secondary option that if you want to use. Next up we have got the poison and rock type. Now the only Pokemon here is Nihilego, and I think I've said that wrong. If I have said that wrong, feel free to comment down below how I should say it with the pronunciation, but regardless, we're here talking about the poison rock type. Now the biggest issue here is the ground typing. You're 4 times weak to ground. You have also got weaknesses to water and to also psychic and steel. Now with regards to this, I would definitely consider going for a dark type. Dark type will hit neutral on the ground type. It will also hit neutral on the steel type and will hit super effective on the psychic type as well there, and also neutral on the water type. The best Terastal, at least in my opinion here, would be the grass type. It takes neutral damage from the psychic and also steel, and will hit super effectively on the ground and super effectively on the water, but you do have to be very cautious of that steel type coming in. So if you could have another Pokemon like a fighting type in your team to cover that, that would work really well. You've also then got the water typing. The water typing will obviously be super effective against the ground type. It will hit neutral on the psychic and also the steel typing, and will take neutral damage from the water typing as well. So water typing works a bit better as a defensively aspect. If you're looking for offensive, I'd say go for grass. If you're looking again kind of more of a defensive, more of a sort of taking it out of any of its weaknesses aspects, then dark would definitely be your option there. So depending on which one you want to play will be which one you decide out of those 3. Next up we have got the rock and psychic type. Now unfortunately this does actually still have quite a few weaknesses. You've got the dark type weakness, the ghost type weakness, and the bug type weakness from the psychic type, and you've also got a water type weakness, a steel type weakness, and a grass type weakness on the rock as well. So you have got quite a few weaknesses here, so this isn't the best typing. Now what I would recommend is your strongest Terastal in this case is to turn into a fairy typing. Now, obviously you do have a steel weakness, so you do have to be very, very cautious of that, but turning into the fairy typing allows you to hit super effectively on the dark type, take not very effective damage from the bug type, it takes neutral damage from the ghost, the water, and the grass as well. Now, dark type definitely works as a secondary option here as well, so the dark type hits for super effective damage against any ghost types, it takes not very effective damage from other dark types, it takes neutral damage from your steel type, from your water type and your grass type, but it does take super effective damage from your bug type there as well, so do be very cautious with regards to that. And the same kind of thing comes from grass. So with the grass typing, it allows you to hit super effectively against the water types that could come in, and you hit neutral on basically everything else except for the grass type that could come in, which will hit you not very effectively, but you do obviously have the bug typing issue where it will hit you for super effective damage there as well, and you're not hitting the steel type for super effective damage. So coming up with a really good option here was quite difficult. I would say Dark and Fairy are on par with being the best situations here, but they are definitely very situational, and they do put you at risk for generally another weakness to come in, but at the same time, they're the best options that I think I can see there being with this Terastal. Next up, we have got the Rock and Steel type. Now, this is a very good typing, and the mons that we have here typically are very bulky in Bastiodon, Aggron, and Stakataka, but at the same time, this has got 2 massive weaknesses, one being the fighting type and one being the ground type, which 4 times weakness obviously is huge, and you have also got a weakness to the water typing as well, which is kind of annoying. But there are 3 different typings that I've put for coverage on here. So flying type, I personally think will be your best Terastal here, because 1, it will hit the fighting types for super effective damage, 2, it gives you an immunity to the ground typing, which is obviously something that he was very weak to, and hits neutrally on the water typing as well. So flying type, I think, should work the best. You have also got grass typing, which hits super effectively against the water typing. It's resisted to the ground type, so you'll take less damage from the ground typing, and also you'll take neutral damage from the fighting type there as well. So grass works more as a defensively front, but grass and flying definitely are your two best options here. You have then got fairy type. Now fairy type hits the fighting type for super effective damage, and then takes neutral from the ground and the water typing as well. So it's a good secondary option that allows you to kind of hit for some coverage there as well. You could even run things like water type if you wanted to run defensively, but I would definitely say that flying and grass are your top tier Terastals here, followed by fairy as a secondary. Next up we have got the rock and water type. Now with this typing you've got several notable Pokemon such as Kabutops, Barbaracle and Omastar, and this typing does have one glaring weakness in the grass type. You're 4 times weak to grass, you're weak to fighting types, you're weak to electric types, and you're also weak to ground types. So you do need to be very cautious with regards to these. Now your best Terastal typing in my opinion here would definitely be the flying type Terastal, because one, it hits grass type super effective damage, it hits fighting types for super effective damage, and also allows you to have that immunity to ground types as well. The one issue is the fact that electric types obviously can come in here and they will be super effective against a flying type. So there is a big caution of running that if you are concerned, but having a secondary Pokemon that can deal with electric types definitely would be needed in the team for this case. An alternative definitely that's really good would be the bug type. One, it hits the grass super effective damage, it takes not very effective damage from ground typing, it's able to hit the electric typing, but the only issue is that it can't hit the fighting typing for very much damage, so you do need to be cautious with kind of running that. But the flying or bug typing, I'd say, are the best ones here. But you have also got the fairy typing, which allows you to hit the fighting type for super effective damage, and all the other types you will hit for neutral, or they will hit you for neutral as well. So fairy works as a secondary typing here, but definitely flying and bug are going to be your best typings for the Terastal. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate every single view that any of these videos get, and you know I've put so much time into this that if you made it this way, then all I can do is thank you with my heart, because you know you're what helps the channel. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. As I said, if you could interact, I'd really appreciate it. Comment down below if there are any ones that you disagree with, or any ones that you would add a different Terastal typing to, and give your reasoning for it as well. And I'd really love to see that. I think that would be a really cool way to interact with me, and I will definitely take a look at them and I'll try and reply as much as I can. But yeah, thank you so much for watching.